Welcome back, guys. So in this video we're going to be texturing this model. We did the baking in the last video. Now we can start adding some materials and bringing this baby to life. So there's a couple of things we need to do first. So right now we're in polyfill mode and we need to go to the brush here. So this will allow us to freeform texture on top of our model or paint. So let's hit Control Z to go back. And there's a couple of different ways to go about adding materials to the model. You can drag and drop one way, or you can hit Control Z, and on the right side we have the layers panel. If we just drag and drop inside the layers, we see it as well. And there's also something I should mention now, that this is similar to Photoshop if you guys are familiar. So whatever material is on top is the more prominent color. So if I were to grab this bone material and drag this above, the aluminum, this now inherits the main color. So let's hit Control Z to go back. And what I want to do is add a material to be the base material. So I'll scroll down inside of the smart materials, not the materials, but the smart materials. And I'll scroll to this still painted green here, and I'll drag and drop this into the model. Now this is a pre-set texture, so it already gives us a bunch of cool features. And what I want to do is just affect some of these to get rid of some of this dirt here. So on this layer, I'm going to select the folder to drop down. Now we have options that we can toggle on and off, and I want to toggle off the dirt, or if I want, I could just delete it by selecting this trash can after it's selected. Now I'm going to change the base color because I want to choose a darker color. So I'll select base, and then at the bottom here we have parameters we can adjust. So I'll choose the color and I'll make it a grayish color, because we're going to be taking this into Unreal, so we can't use true values. So we can't use 100% white or 100% black. It needs to be like a darker gray. So once we're satisfied, we'll just click out of this. And what I want to do now is close this folder. So we'll scroll back up, close this folder, and let's double click on the text to change the name to something closer to base color, base material, however you want to say it. Enter. Now let's add some custom patterns going around certain specific areas on this model. And the one I want to use is in the smart materials, and it's going to be a fabric color. So I'll go up, and next to this blue material you see fabric stretchy sci-fi, and we can just drag this on top. So this is on top in the bodies layer or the texture layer, so it's going to be the one inherited. So like we did before, we can open this folder by selecting the folder, and let's start to change the scaling of this pattern. So the first square we see here controls the color, and then the one on the right controls the mask. So if you look at the bottom here, it says fill because we're on the base color. But if you go to the right and click this one, you'll see we have hex, and that controls the mask pattern. And now we can choose hex, and then we have options at the bottom that we can choose. So let's scroll up a little bit down here, and where it says UV transformations, you can adjust this slider by the scale to make this bigger or smaller. So we'll choose something closer to 26. Looks fine. That looks good. So now that we have this here, we can start to change the colors. So I want to change this material here. So if I select this first square, we can change the material by scrolling down to base color, and we can change this base to be whatever we want. And I'm going to choose like a light tone gray, so somewhere around here. And now I'm going to go back to the hexagon material, or I'll scroll down to the base color, and I change the base color to black. So now we see this on top, we see the black background, and this is exactly what we want. So let's go back to the top of the folder and close it down. Now let's select the top layer. Once it's highlighted blue, it's selected. And now we can right click inside of it and go to the top where it says add black mask. Now it's technically invisible because it's covered by a black mask. So if you start to paint, you'll start to reveal what's underneath that black mask. Think of it as a giant eraser. So let's hit Control Z, and what we want to do is just paint inside of this section here. So we'll just zoom in, and you can draw straight lines by holding down Shift. So if you click once, hold Shift, you'll get this little line cursor indicating your next direction for your next stroke. So if I click here, you'll quickly see that it's a straight line. And we want to make this harder right now, because right now it's it has a feather to it. So to make it harder, you can hold Control and right mouse button, and you can move your mouse up to make it harder or down to make it softer. In a quick example, you'll see now I change it to soft, so around the border there's a nice feather. But if I hold Control and right mouse and move up, you see it's a harder stroke now. So just compare those two, and let's hit Control Z to go back, and let's just finish texturing this inside. And also you can change the brush size by going to the top here and downscaling it or upscaling it, or you can hit Control, right mouse button, and move your mouse to the right or left. So I'm just gonna paint this in by holding Shift to draw those lines that I need. And you're gonna get used to this as time goes, so don't get hung up over this if you can't do it just yet. It's gonna be uncomfortable, especially working in Fusion 360, going to Blender. Now we're inside of Substance Painter. So we still have Unreal next, so we have one more program to dive into. So once this section is done here, you can scroll out to zoom out, you know, and take a quick look at this. So we want to add more materials to this, and let's change this names to something like pattern 1 or pattern hex or whatever you want, something that you know what it is, and we'll add more materials. So let's add another smart material. Let's actually add a regular material now, and let's add this aluminum here. So we'll drag this on top of the model, and what I want to do is just downscale this. So we don't have a folder because this isn't a smart material, this is just a regular material, so our options are more easier to find. So we'll just make this somewhere around here. That looks good. Now we'll right click on the layer and add a black mask. Now what I want to do is texture this area here on the top. So we're just unveiling what's underneath this black mask. So once we have that, that looks fine. Let's add another layer, and we could name this, but it's pretty simple to see what this is. So we'll add another layer, and this time we're going to add a material color. So we'll choose this blue here, this blue matte, and we'll select it, and let's change the color to a closer to orange, because I want the sci-fi environment to be orange a little bit. I want that to be like the main color. So once I have the color I want, I can start to paint on this. So let's make this material harder. So we'll hold Control, right mouse click, and move your mouse up to get a hard stroke. And what I want to do is start to draw across this. So I'll make this a little bit bigger. I'll click here, hold Shift, drag my mouse to the right, click again, and I just want to cover this over, so I'll just drag back around. And that's fine that I have this little imperfection here, because this is going to add to what I'm going to do next. So I have that stroke going across this way horizontally, and I'll add another small stroke at the top. So I'll click once I'm satisfied, hold Shift, drag my mouse down, click a second time. Now I have these two patterns here, and I want to add a nice mask to this, and I can do this customly, but I think it might be a bit faster to just add a smart mask. So I'll go to the bottom left, go to smart mask, and I'll choose one of these that that works a bit better. So I can use edge scratchy or scratched, and I can drag it on top of the layer, And now you'll see I have it to where it looks like it's been wear and tear over time. And I can downsize this edge wear by clicking on it, and I can go to wear level, and I can just downscale it or upscale it depending on what I want to do with it. And I think this is fine here, or maybe it might be too much. That's an option if you want to add that wear and tear, or you can hit Control Z and go back and just have it like this and continue it. It's really up to you, but I do want to fix this if I am going to keep this like this. And other options are, there's different brushes here. So if I want to go to brushes, I can go to eraser, the eraser tool here, go down to brushes, choose a material like this, and then start to add my own wear and tear. And then I can change the flow and the stroke opacity to add a very subtle flow to it. Control Z to go back, or change the opacity, stroke, so it's nice and subtle, nothing too much going on. But be wary of what you're doing, because this is going to be a modular set, so it's going to be repeated, and you don't want it to be too pronounced, because it's going to make you lose the illusion that it's an actual environment. And we are in 1K texture, so in the texture set settings, not the layers but the texture settings, you can go up to the top and you see the size is at 1K, so we can bring this up if we wanted to for better resolution. I'm going to be exporting out at 4K anyway. Now that I have this done, I want to add some minor detail that's going to help sell this as being a bigger panel than it is. And I can do that by adding a new layer here, and I'm going to choose for the material. Actually, while we're still in brushes, I want to get this effect away by choosing basic hard brush. Now I can go to materials, go to aluminum here, the silver one, and then if I were to draw on this model, you see oh, I'm sorry, I'm still in the eraser, so go back to the regular brush. Now we can go to aluminum for the material, and we can add a normal and a height to this. So if we scroll down, we have options that we can change the height, and we want this to be lower. Now if I were to zoom in, I can make my brush smaller. So once I click, you'll see that it looks like it's a nail in here, but I want this to be bigger so we can actually see this a bit better. So this looks a lot better. Add these little panels here. And I'll go up, add a couple more. And this is why texturing is so fun, because you have the freedom to do what you want, without being restricted. So once you're satisfied, we can call this a wrap, and we can start exporting this out. So we'll go to File, Export Textures. Where it says size, I'm going to export out 4K because my computer can handle it. But if not, you guys want to use something like 2K. And where it says output template, we're going to choose Unreal, because we're taking this into Unreal. So we're going to scroll down to Unreal Engine 4 packed. It's going to pack the textures just the way we want it. Or if you're going to be bringing this into Blender, you can change it to the Blender's textures. But now we need an output directory where we want these to be stored, and I'll just create a folder in the low poly section. So I'll go back to where I created my low poly, right? I'll go to low poly, I'll create a new folder, and I'll title this wall panel 1 _ textures. I'll select this folder, and I'll hit select folder. Now I'll press export, and it's going to export these out into that folder. And once I'm done with this, I'm going to actually go into the low poly folder and drag that model inside with the textures. So this is almost done. It's done. Now I can exit out of here, and I'll open up that folder of the low poly, and I'll drag the low poly OBJ into the folder with the textures, and I'll actually delete this MTL file because I don't need it anymore. And this is how you texture. This is the entire process. So next we'll go back into Blender and we'll work on the other models.